Okay, this is Sarah Snuggs, and again, it is 2 p.m., so we're going to go ahead and get started. I do want to just say thank you and welcome you to the Alabama Infrastructure Trial webinar. This is our second of 4 infrastructure trial webinars that we are going to be having here in Alabama. There will be 2 more next week. We're covering the same material, but you are welcome, of course, to come back and attend. We are also recording today's webinar, though, so this will be posted if you want to go back through, revisit the information that we're going to provide. If your school, before we get started, I just want to note, if you have a school that's interested in participating in the Tech Roadshow that's coming up in January, please email Kenitra Germany by November 10th and just get your information added. And again, this is for the Tech Roadshow that will start in January. Again, my name is Sarah Snuggs, and I'm going to be your presenter today. So thank you again for joining us. If you have any questions as we go through the training, you do have a Q&A option as well as that chat. If you want to use that Q&A, it's going to open up a question box, and you can simply type your question into the field, and it will come here into the panelists. If you use the chat, do definitely make sure you choose the all panelists so that I can see that, and I will try to answer questions as we go through the training today. So during our training today, we are going to be covering the infrastructure trial tenant and the activities that are available in the tenant. We'll talk about some best practices to getting set up, walk through setting up test sessions in the tenant, and then close with some resources and support that will be available for you. So we're going to be introducing you, or for some of you, if you did the infrastructure trial last year, we'll be refreshing you on the Alabama infrastructure trial tenant in the ACT Aspire portal. I'm going to show you how to access it, as well as how an infrastructure trial can help you prepare for online testing. So some of you might be wondering what an infrastructure trial is, and essentially it's a dress rehearsal of a computer-based assessment. ACT Aspire highly recommends, and it is actually required this year in Alabama, to either participate in an infrastructure trial or to have been involved in periodic testing. So if you're not doing periodic testing, you do need to make sure you are going through an infrastructure trial to prepare for computer-based testing. Unlike a live assessment, you're not going to be using any live or real student information. Instead, what we call dummy or simulated student information will be used. And you never want to use, and I'm going to say this several times throughout the training, so get ready, never want to use real student data in the infrastructure trial tenant. It is a shared environment, and we want to make sure that we're keeping that student information confidential. So during this dry run, you're going to confirm that TestNav is configured correctly, that your devices can successfully run TestNav, that your network will bear the full load of the number of students you have that need to test, and that you are ensuring that your staff know what to do and are prepared for a computer-based assessment. An infrastructure trial is going to give you the opportunity to review your device, network, and staff readiness in an assessment that gives you the least impact on students. Since we're using simulated student data, you're not impacting your production operational tenant. So we're going to go over some best practices for using the infrastructure trial, since there are some differences between this tenant and your operational tenant. And please note, this training applies only to the infrastructure trial tenant. The processes and practice that we're going to go through, they only apply there in the tenant. There are again, differences between the operational tenant and the infrastructure trial. And so there's going to be some differences in these processes and activities. And we'll note what those are, but just definitely keep in mind that this is for your infrastructure trial. So there are a lot of benefits to running an infrastructure trial. It's going to allow you to test your local processes and training in a practice environment. This will help you determine maybe if an individual staff member needs refresher training, or if maybe you have a gap in training that affected all of your staff. You can also be sure that the processes and policies you have in place will help you smoothly run a computer-based assessment. By having multiple people access the tests simultaneously, you're essentially simulating a live testing week. And this is going to help you know if your internet bandwidth is capable of supporting the number of students that you want to test. And if you find any unexpected results, you're finding that early and are able to prepare for it rather than finding it out during the week of testing. So for example, you might find that the attendance reporting, it kicks off every Tuesday morning, and maybe that's a pretty heavy, intensive reporting job that's going to impact your bandwidth. So you want to be able to plan for that accordingly. Maybe you're going to move that attendance reporting to later in the day when you don't have students testing, or maybe you're going to shift student testing based on what you find. So you want to make sure that you're aware of these things and keeping track of them. And used in conjunction with System Check, the infrastructure trial is going to help you determine how many students you can test concurrently. You will also be able to confirm if your network configuration is properly set up with all of the ACT Aspire URLs, and that's going to allow your testing traffic to navigate through your firewalls, your content filters, and ensure that the test content and student responses are able to get through. An infrastructure trial will also help you review and update your school and/or district communication plan. Definitely always need to have a communication plan in place so that everyone knows who they need to contact in the event of any computer or internet issues that may occur during testing. So while you're developing this, you want to make sure you're including everyone from the room supervisors to your technology coordinators to your district test coordinators. And finally, the infrastructure trial lets you practice using the ACT Aspire portal and using all the different functionality that's available there without fear of impacting your operational student data and setup. Again, we're only using simulated student data, and the exemplar tests are going to be used. So that means that there's no confidential student data or test content, and no responses are going to be captured as we go through this. We're not going to be capturing TestNav responses for reporting. So it's very, again, practice environment to get you prepared for a computer-based assessment. So let's talk about some TestNav updates since the last time you tested. At this time, we very much recommend using the TestNav apps for all of your computer-based assessment. This means that you're not going to have any issues with Java being out of date, or possibly for Java or Firefox to run an update to their programs right before, or even worse, right during testing. So we very much recommend always using the TestNav apps for your computer-based testing. And in conjunction with that, we do have new TestNav 8 apps that are available for installation. So that's for desktop, Chromebooks, and iPads. So you want to be sure that you have the latest version installed on all the machines that you may use for testing. There are some updated steps for iPad testing as well. So once you install the updated iPad app, if you're using iPads, there's going to be a few changes in setup and sign-in processes, and these changes result from the following. Apple has introduced a new automatic assessment configuration, the AAC, that was introduced with iOS 9.3.2, and that affects the setup and sign-in processes for assessments. It actually makes it a little bit simpler. Before you had 4 different options you had for configuration. Apple now has one for all of their assessment configuration. And there's also a new prompt that is in iPad, in the iPad app for TestNav. It's the Enable Microphone Permission prompt. This is only going to be seen once, though. So at the very first time you launch the TestNav app after you install it, it's just going to ask you to allow TestNav to access the microphone should at any time it need to, even if it's not going to be used in your assessment. So just go ahead and say allow when you see that prompt. Again, you're only going to see it that first time after you launch the TestNav app after you update it. But if you do need to use a browser-based assessment for some instances, need a backup for some reason, we do want you to be aware that most browsers have stopped supporting or do plan to stop supporting in the very near future the MPAPI plugin. And we need that plugin for TestNav to administer assessments using a browser. So due to these changes, The only browser that's going to be supported this whole school year by TestNav is the Firefox ESR 45. That's the extended support release version. So Firefox ESR 45, and it is the 32-bit version. There is a 64-bit version out there. Don't install that one. It does not have the full MPA API support. So again, Firefox ESR 45, and it is the 32-bit version. And it's important that you review the system requirements page to understand all these latest updates. And we do have a new support site. So I'm just going to show you that real quick. This is the link to it. And it's also on the ACT Aspire landing page under your technology setup. If you go to your system requirements, it will take you to this page. But I just want to show you that this is a new system requirements page from what we had last year in Avocet. A couple things I want to note. You'll see on here that Android is listed. However, ACT Aspire does not support Android testing at this time. So we are still the same as last year: Windows, OS 10, Linux, the iOS, and the Chrome OS. So do not use any Android devices for testing it. They are not supported by ACT Aspire. So this is the new support site, and this is where you can come to find all of the hardware requirements are listed up top. These are the URLs that we talked about that you need to whitelist for ACT Aspire testing. You'll find setup instructions for all of the different types of devices that are available, how to set up the installable version, the app that we prefer you use, how to set up those on your different devices. Again, no Android. And then down here, you'll see that there is actually a link directly to the correct browser type if you do need to use, again, the Firefox ESR 45. This is a link directly to the correct version. That way you don't get that 64-bit one and it doesn't work. You can come here and make sure you're getting the correct download. And again, the setup instructions. And these are also available here on the landing page. This is actaspire.pearson.com, the ACT Aspire landing page. Under Technology Setup, you'll also find links. It takes you to this download installable page. Again, we have links to all of the different apps that you'll need. Do not get the Android. You'll find your browser-based links as well as the ProctorCache installers. So these are the two new sites that you're going to see this year, this download page as well as this new system requirements. And you can navigate through different information here on the left-hand side of the pane. Okay, so I just showed you that new landing page, well, not new landing page, but the landing page where you can access the technology setup and see those new links are now available to you. So again, the landing page and the technology setup, that's going to be your kind of one-stop shop for all of your major technology documents. It's going to explain about the different computer-based testing components. You saw you have links to your installers. And so again, make sure you're downloading and installing the latest versions of all of the apps and for your Proctor caching. And you'll also see that this is has a link to the latest technical readiness manual as well. And then just showing you again, this is that new download page that you'll see if you click on any of those installer links. Again, oops, sorry, went too fast. Do not use the Android. Make sure you're using the correct links for the type of device you have. Again, you'll see the browser-based and the ProctorCache installers are also here as well. And as we're going through this information, I also want to let you know that out on the training management system, you can find this on the landing page under the training and manuals or directly at actaspire.tms.pearson.com. From the training management system, you'll see that we have several different tech readiness resources available, including a version of this training as a self-paced training module that you can go through, and that there is an infrastructure trial guide that you can download from the TMS as well. So these resources are available to you. The training management system, if you haven't been there before, when you input your email address, it's just going to ask for your first and last name to confirm. And then every time you come back after that, you put in your email address and you'll be able to get straight into the training management system. Okay, so now that you've gotten some of your resources to get started, I want to talk about the infrastructure trial tenant. So the tenant is in the ACT Aspire portal. So you're going to log into the portal, and you need to make sure that you are in the infrastructure trial tenant. Up at the top of your screen, once you get logged in, you'll be able to see if you're in the Alabama tenant or the infrastructure trial tenant, and you'll be able to toggle switch between them as needed. To do so, you'll click on your little user icon at the top of the screen and then select Edit Profile, and that will take you here to this Profile Details page. And you'll see here in the current tenant, you can click on the Switch Tenant option, and you'll be able to type in Infrastructure Trial into the selection field and then select it and apply it. And there are instructions in the portal user guide to help you switch tenants as well, but it's a pretty straightforward process, and I'll show you that here in just a moment. I do want to note that if you do not see the option to switch your tenant, that means your profile does not have access to the different tenant. So you'll want to contact your test coordinator for any assistance with your profile to make sure that you have access to both the Alabama and infrastructure trial tenant. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to the portal here for a moment. And so here I am, I'm in the Alabama tenant, and I don't want to be there. I want to be over in the infrastructure trial. So I'm going to click on my little user up in the top and choose Edit Profile. And it takes a moment for it to load. And then here you see that switch tenant. So you're just going to click on this, and it's going to open up an input field for you. And I'm going to start typing in the infrastructure trial, and I have access to several tenants, so I'm going to choose the infrastructure trial and then click Apply. And you'll see up here that it switches from Alabama to infrastructure trial. So that's how you switch between the two. Again, just go to the Edit Profile, and you can switch whenever needed, as often as needed. So once you're in, I want to talk about the organization setup. So the setup of the operational tenant is not directly connected to the setup of the infrastructure trial tenant. The infrastructure trial tenant is a shared environment, and this means that our organizations, our districts and schools, they don't have a direct match to the infrastructure trial tenant. So you'll see that we have very generic names are used here in the infrastructure trial. So everyone in your organization with access to the infrastructure trial is working in this shared environment. So very different from the operational tenant. So you'll see, we just kind of have the elementary school, high school, middle school. You'll invite people to the correct school level type for them. And all of your elementary schools will be working together type of thing. And that's why, again, we're going to talk about the differences between operational and infrastructure trial, because this is a shared practice environment. It is not exactly the same, but it's going to help you prepare for the computer-based assessments. So administrators and test coordinators, you will be able to invite new users into the portal. You do it in the same process that you did before. You go to that organization members, and you can invite new people there. You should only invite users into the infrastructure trial tenant, though, that you want to participate in the practice that you're going to conduct. So you may not need all of your users to be invited into the infrastructure trial tenant. Like I said, it's the same process to invite users, and if you have any questions on inviting users, there are, again, instructions in the portal users guide on Avocet for how to invite new users into the tenant. So like I said, the infrastructure trial is a shared environment, so everybody's going to be able to see each other's test sessions, even if they were created by and belong to other staff. So it's very important that users get trained on using this shared space and understand how it differs from being in the operational tenant. Like I said, again, You do not need to add all of your users from the operational tenant into the infrastructure trial tenant. Just invite those that you are going to be having involved in your trial run. These might be your technology coordinators, room supervisors, etc. And then, like I said, make sure that everyone is trained on using this shared space. And we're going to go through those differences here now between the infrastructure trial and operational tenants. Okay, so we'll start with network configurations. So some of these things will apply to both tenants, and some will need to be repeated as you toggle between them. So network configurations, this is what your technology coordinator is doing at the network level. So since this applies to your network, any settings you're going to change or determine are needed to be changed, you're going to be doing that outside of the portal, and it applies to both your infrastructure trial tenant and the live operational testing. These are things like configuring your firewalls and content filters, whitelisting our URLs. Again, that's done on your network and outside the portal. The Proctor Cache installation. This year, Proctor caching is required due to the many benefits it provides. So last year it was recommended. This year it is required. So if you haven't done that, you will be needing to do that this year. But the Proctor Cache installation is on a server or a computer within the organization. And you can use that same installation for both the infrastructure trial tenant and the operational testing. You don't need to have a separate installation. However, the Proctor Cache settings in the portal, you go and create a default setting for your organization. Those do need to be applied in both the infrastructure trial tenant and then again in the operational tenant. They are separate tenants, so you do need to set up those organizational settings in the operational tenant, and we're going to talk about how you're going to do your Proctor Cache settings in the portal because it's a little different for the infrastructure trial. Student testing computers, those apply to both the infrastructure trial and the live operational testing. So once you get your computers set up and they're ready to go, then you can use them for both the trial and the operational testing. Like we've talked about, student enrollment and registration, those are separate. We're not going to use any real student data in the infrastructure trial, so you'll need to, of course, make sure your real student information is in the operational tenant. We are going to be loading practice students for you. You are able to add additional students if you want or need. Again, just never use real student data. Test sessions will be created separately in each tenant. And then since they are separate test sessions, the authorization tickets will be different as well. They're always tied to the test session that you're using. And while we're not using real student data, we do want you to still treat the authorization tickets as secure materials and kind of go through that process so that you're again, testing that process that you're going to use to distribute authorization tickets, making sure that they're being secured, that your room supervisors get them back to the coordinators and go through that process. You will not need to resume any students in the infrastructure trial tenant. Like I said, we are not capturing student responses. So because of this, the students don't ever go through an active, exited, or submitted status. They're going to be ready to use at any time. The TestNav error messages will be the same between both tenants, and that's why we want you to go through the infrastructure trial. We want you to see if you're getting any error messages, start to plan for how you're going to hopefully fix them and address them before testing. But if you need to, see them during testing, that you hopefully have seen them before and are able to quickly resolve them. And then your communication plan, you're going to be developing that through the infrastructure trial so that you are as prepared as possible for your operational testing. And then reporting will not be applicable. Since we're not doing any student responses, there is no reporting in the infrastructure trial tenant, only in your operational. Okay, so now let's talk about naming conventions and best practices. So again, each user in the trial tenant is going to be able to see everyone's test sessions. So we recommend the best practice to develop a unique naming convention that will work for you so that you can easily locate your individual test sessions. So in this example, the test session was created with the grade and subject. I know this is early high school math. We'll say this is my operational student name. You know, could be Reagan Middle School or whatever the case might be, whatever your live operational school name is, and then the type of device being tested. Some people also, you know, have folks use their initials or their first and last name as part of this, but come up with a unique naming convention that will help everyone quickly locate their own test sessions and that they aren't messing with someone else's test session. And so this unique naming convention is going to help you quickly search. So we have all these people sharing an environment. We want to be able to quickly search for them. So under the Find My Test Sessions, you have that search field. With your naming convention, you can start to enter the name of the session you want to locate. Otherwise, it could start to get pretty difficult going through all the sessions that are being created. So I have a question coming in. So the multi-tenant system will have sessions for everyone in the state that's participating. You will need to create your test sessions. That's what we're saying. You need to come up with a unique naming convention so that you can find. You'll have your own district, but again, there's an elementary school, a high school, and a middle school. In that district, you probably have multiple elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, et cetera. So they're kind of all going to be sharing one location. So you're going to want to have that unique naming convention so you can find your information. Yes, you will only be able to see the information for your district. But again, you know, that's why we don't want to use real student data though, because even though it's for your district, we don't want people at, you know, one elementary school being able to see student information for a different elementary school. Okay, so proctor caching, like I said, this is going to be required this year for operational testing, so you want to use it, of course, during the infrastructure trial. You're going to install that on a computer or server within your organization, and it can be used for both the infrastructure trial and, again, your operational testing. So to set up your test sessions with proctor caching in the infrastructure trial tenant, you're normally going to be doing this when you create a test session. So in the live operational environment, you usually do that under the organizations and create a proctor cache setting. You can still do that if you have one proctor caching machine for your entire district. A lot of our districts have them at the school level though, so you are going to need to do it when you create your test sessions because you can't really create it at the elementary school because again, you might have 5 elementary schools sharing that organization. So if you have it at the district level, you can still set up your organization settings. Otherwise, when you go to create a test session, down at the bottom, you can hand type in your IP address for the proctor caching machine that you are going to be using there at your organization. And then that way, your test sessions will be tied to your proctor caching machine. So it's a little different from the operational tenant. So if each school has a proctor caching computer set up, again, you're going to set up your own proctor caching environment. You're going to install it on your proctor caching machine, the proctor cache software, but you're not going to do the proctor cache settings unless you're at the district level. In the infrastructure trial tenant, you're going to do it at the test session level. In the operational tenant, you'll still be able to do it at the proctor cache settings level for your school, if you're doing it at the school level. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, district level, you can use your organization settings. School level, you need to do it in the create a test session, that bottom last step of proctor caching. And then when you're managing your test sessions, so this manage test sessions under your organizations, you'll start to see this proctor cache column is going to have all the different proctor caching IP addresses. And so you'll be able to see that information. Since we're not doing an organization level proctor cache setting though, you won't do the pre-caching of tests. In the infrastructure trial tenant, it's going to proctor cache what we say on the fly. As you start to log those simulated students into TestNav, it is going to start bringing in that test content onto your proctor caching machine then. So let's talk about a tracking sheet. So very best practice is to create a tracking sheet. This can be whatever works best for you and your district and or school. This could be a shared Google document, could even be a paper worksheet that's placed in the computer lab when you're conducting the trial. But basically, you want to make sure you're testing all aspects of the computer-based assessment and then tracking what worked well and what didn't work well. You're going to make sure that your wireless access points, if you're doing wireless testing, that those aren't overloaded. You want to make sure all the peripherals work, that their keyboards, their headphones, their mice, those types of things, that they are working and operational. And then document this. Like I said, maybe you see that screensavers keep popping up on some of the computers in one of the computer labs. You want to make sure you check your other computer labs, see if that's happening there. Maybe you want to turn off screensavers during testing so that it doesn't pop up if the student isn't moving their mouse for a few minutes while they go through and read a passage or something. If you're doing browser-based testing in one specific computer lab, as kind of your overflow or your backup, and you're finding out that Java isn't installed on those computers, then obviously you need to make sure you get Java updated for any browser-based testing you might do. Remember though, of course, installable TestNav is recommended, and that if you do need to use a browser, Firefox ESR 45, the 32-bit version is the only one that you can use. Maybe you see antivirus kicks on every day that can kick kids out of TestNav, so you want to make sure that you reschedule that to later in the day when students aren't testing. And really everything that you fix because of your infrastructure trial, it's going to help you be prepared for the actual test window. And if possible, I know it's not always going to be possible, but we do recommend, an everything is plugged in idea versus just running off of battery. Obviously, I know that's not going to be possible in all cases, so definitely make sure that they are fully charged if you're not able to plug in. But basically, we just don't want a student running out of battery power in the middle of their test. Okay, so best practice for student data. So all the student data, again, it's going to be simulated or dummy data. And when you go to students, find students, we will have preloaded student information for you. And you'll see that it's typically labeled with a first name, last name type of simulated information. And like I've said, we cannot stress enough, do not ever add actual student data into the infrastructure trial tenant. It is a security violation because you will be exposing confidential student information to others who are not authorized to it. So try to use the simulated student data that's already preloaded for you. And if you do feel you need to add more, make sure that it is fake information. And then since we're using the exemplar tests, like I've said, test responses are not going to be captured or sent to ACT Aspire. So because of this, students in the test session don't ever go into any other status other than scheduled or ready. So once you start the test session, move it to an in progress status, they will move into a ready status and you'll be able to log them into the test. So normally, once they log in, they would go to active, maybe exited, submitted. You have all these different testing statuses that they go through, but in the infrastructure trial, they will always be ready. And because of this, you can use the authorization ticket information over and over without managing the status of the test session. And this is really intended to give you some flexibility. You're able to log this authorization information in multiple times. You can do it consecutively. You can use them multiple times, even at the exact same time. So you could have one test session with, we'll say, 30 students in it. You can take those same student authorization tickets and go from lab to lab to lab and log them into the test all at the same time. And so you can kind of quickly ramp up and see how many students you can have logged in at the same time. See your 30, 60, 90, 120 computers, however much you need to scale up. So you don't have to create necessarily multiple test sessions in order to test all of your machines. You can, again, create one test session or a few test sessions and then use those student logins over and over. Okay, so now let's kind of go through the steps to conducting an infrastructure trial. So step one, you need to set up Proctor caching in your organization. So Proctor caching, remember, is required this year for all computer-based testing. So you can download the Proctor Cache software off the ACT Aspire Technology Setup, and then you'll see that Proctor Cache installers link. If you did use Proctor caching last year, these are new installers since last year. So even if you used it last year, you need to make sure you go uninstall the existing version and then reinstall the latest one. And there are install instructions that you can follow, but it's pretty, usually pretty quick to install the Proctor Cache machine. It's a small footprint and doesn't take very much time to install. After the install, you should have a Proctor Cache folder, and these are just kind of some examples. So this is on a Windows 7, this is on a Mac, this is on a Windows 10. So they look slightly different, as you can see, but in all cases, you have this monitor Proctor caching, Proctor Cache monitor option. You'll also have the start Proctor caching. Here in the Mac, it's start command, start bat on Windows 10. So you can see that they are similar. You'll have your monitor, your start, and your stop. You can also, from the Proctor Cache machine, go to this URL, localhost:4480, and that will allow you to open the diagnostics as well. So we're basically going to choose this monitor Proctor caching, and it's going to open up our diagnostic screen, or again, you can go to this localhost. So if this page opens up, you see this diagnostics Proctor Cache machine, it means your installation was successful. If you didn't get this page, but you have the Proctor Cache folder, just make sure you've started your Proctor caching. You may not have started the service. And then once you start to bring in content, as your students start to log in, you'll start to see test content loading here onto the Proctor Cache diagnostic screen. So next, you need to log into the ACT Aspire portal, and you want to make sure that you are in the infrastructure trial tenant. As we previously covered, if you see Alabama up there, just go to that person icon, edit your profile, and switch to the infrastructure trial tenant. And remember that you are going to be able to see everyone's test sessions here, even the ones that other people have created. So you want to make sure you have that naming convention and that you are only accessing those that you create. We're going to talk about creating that test session now. So to create a test session, you still need to have a school selected as your organization. You can only create test sessions at the school level. Once you've chosen the school, then you can either choose new test session from the dashboard, or from the summative test dropdown, you can choose to create a new test session. I'm just going to click on that new test session, and it opens up our new test details screen. And I want to say that you'll see, just like you do in the live environment, that the create single and the create multiple are here. However, if you use the create multiple option, just know that it's always going to give it those generic naming conventions that the portal does. It's usually, the grade and subject, the content, and then it's like session 1. So it's very generic, session 1, session 2, session 3. So it's not going to be using your naming convention. So if you use that create multiple, we're going to have to go quickly find all your test sessions and edit them to put in the naming convention. So I would kind of recommend using that create single so that you know that you're using your naming convention. And then if you're having to hand enter your IP address, that'll be down here as well. So you'll still select a test to be given, and this is going to be from your exemplar tests. You'll still want to create a testing schedule. We're again going through the process of preparing for computer-based testing. You can put in a start and end date. You can choose start and end times for your testing, and brand new, just came in last week. You can, if this is not correct, your time zone is not showing, you can change the time zone to make sure it's central, and if daylight savings is going on. So this should be accurate, but if for any reason it ever isn't, you can always manually change that to make sure the start and end time are following your local time. You can set days of the week that you want it to be available, because once you start the test session, you can use those authorization tickets. So, maybe it's going to just be Monday through Friday, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can set that schedule. You'll enter your unique naming convention and remembering our best practices. And then you're going to enter your Proctor Caching IP address here in the IP address field, and then host port is 4480. And then you'll select the Create Test Session, and it's going to create your test session for you. Just like in the live operational tenant, you're then going to need to add your students into the tenant. So this will show your test session details. You'll click on the Add button, and you will be able to see your list of simulated students. Check the box next to the ones you want to add, and then select Done, and they will be added into the test session. There's a question as far as the host port number. That is 4480 is the host port number. So the IP address will be your local Proctor Caching machine, and then the port number will be 4480. Okay, so now that you've added in the students to the test session, then you need to get their authorization tickets. And just like in the operational tenant, the authorization tickets will be available for each student in the session, and you do need to start the test session still before the authorization ticket can be used. There's a question, can multiple schools in the same district use the same students at the same time? Yes, the students, since we're not capturing responses, you can even use the same students in multiple test sessions at the same time. So that's a good question. So yeah, you'll be able to reuse your authorization tickets, but you can even reuse the same student. So if we loaded, I'm not sure how many we loaded for each organization, but I'm just going to say we loaded 200 students, you could use those same 200 students in multiple test sessions at the same time. Okay, so to start the test session, you're still going to choose that ready and change it into a start test, and then I'll go to in progress. Once it's in progress, you'll be able to use the authorization tickets. You can use them directly from the login screen, or you can go to authorization and print them out. Like I said, if you print them out, we do recommend that you kind of follow the same process, treat them as secure materials, collect them at the end of your practice, so that you're going through that training, that process that you're going to use during the operational assessment. And like I said, you can print these out multiple times, and that way you can hand out multiple authorizations to different people. They can go test them on multiple computers, multiple computer labs as needed, because we really want you to stress test your environment. Make sure that, if you're going to have 200 students logging in at the same time, that you're testing what's going to happen if I have 200 students testing at the same time. If you know that testing is going to be going on for a couple hours, keep those students logged in for a couple hours on your infrastructure trial, so that again, if some sort of reporting job comes up and it starts to kick students out, that you're aware of that. Don't just log them in and then log them right out. You want to simulate an environment. Obviously, you don't need to have people there for that whole couple hours or whatever of testing, hour of testing, whatever the case might be. But you want to have them logged in so that you start to see if they get kicked out. And then caching the test. Like I said, unless you have your Proctor Caching at the district level and have that organization setting, you're going to be creating them, that Proctor Caching information at the test session level. And so it's not going to pre-cache the test when the first student logs in to the test with that authorization ticket, and the Proctor Caching machine is going to see that that authorization ticket is being used, and we'll start to gather the content and pull it onto the Proctor Caching machine locally. So again, real quick, you're going to install Proctor Cache. You're going to confirm it was installed by going to that diagnostic screen. You're going to log into the portal. You're going to start to create your test sessions, add your students, get them logged into the test, and then by logging them in, you're going to start caching the content to the Proctor caching machine. Like I said, keep track of any issues you may encounter. You want to jot down, again, what's working really well, what problems you encountered, if you had that problem, how you solved it, because then that way you can have a lessons learned afterwards. And if you're able to, you might consider two separate different infrastructure trial runs. One that kind of stress tests your technology, you make sure all of the computer and infrastructure is ready, and then maybe do a separate one for your staff. So go through infrastructure, Proctor caching readiness, stress testing, and then make sure that all of your staff are prepared, that they understand communication plans, they understand the process to hand out authorization tickets and gather them back, and you're going through the training for your staff as well. You can do them together or separate. And then once you complete your infrastructure trial, then you kind of have some next steps. So like I said, you have your tracking sheet. You want to identify your successes and your lessons learned and determine if there's any technical configurations or practices that may be useful on a wider scale. So one school might have encountered an issue, they were able to resolve it, and they can share that with everyone else, and it could be very beneficial to others. If you're able, you want to repeat your test with all of the different setups. So if you plan to use multiple devices, you're going to be using PCs and Macs, iPads and Chromebooks. Make sure you're testing on all types of workstations that you intend to use during the assessment. Maybe you are going to need to use browser-based testing, you know that, or you would just want to have it as an emergency backup. Then make sure you're testing your browser-based testing on some of your computers if needed. You also want to make sure that you allow your test administration to log into the TestNav tutorial and the exemplars on the ACT Aspire landing page, and this will help them understand the student experience. They're going to be there answering questions from kids who don't maybe understand what they need to do. The administrators need to know, so the room supervisors should go through. They can see the tools, see what types of questions are available, as well as the different formats they might be in. And then do the same thing with your students. Get them prepared. Let them go through the tutorial and the exemplars. And let me show you where those are. So out here on the landing page, there is an exemplar items tab. So this is actaspire.pearson.com and exemplar items. Brand new, we just added it over the summer, is the TestNav 8 tutorial. And this doesn't have any login. And this is intended to show how to use TestNav. So we got a lot of feedback that students were going through the exemplars, which kind of introduced them to the items, but they didn't still understand how to use TestNav. So this is going to show them how to move through the test, how to use the different tools that they're going to see, and how to work with the test questions. So I have a question about Java, and that I've mentioned it. Again, yes, we recommend the installable version. So if you're using the apps, that you do need to make sure we recommend and use those wherever possible. Those are the desktop, iPad, and Chromebook. However, browser-based testing as a backup, or if you know that you're going to need to use it because you don't have enough computers for some other reason to install on, I don't know why you'd need it necessarily, but always use the installable, but browser-based is available as a backup on Firefox ESR 45, 32-bit version. And with that, you do need to make sure that you have Java up to date. If you're using the installable, you don't need to worry about Java though. So this is the tutorial. So like I said, it's going to show them how to use TestNav 8. And so you should have your administrators and your students go through there. And then we have all of our subject and grade-specific exemplars, and these will expose them to the types of questions that they're going to see once they take the ACT Aspire assessment. We have PDF test booklet booklets that go through and talk about the different reporting categories, the depth of knowledge, give you improvement ideas to help students as well. So start with the tutorial, go through that, learn how to use TestNav, and then go into the grade and subject specific exemplar. And then afterwards, then there are some last technology resources, so not afterwards, but here at the end of our training, just want to make sure you're aware of some additional technology resources. These are also on the landing page on technology setup. You'll see there's an additional technology resources section, and there's an other technology resources. When you expand that, you'll be able to see links to the portal users guide, again, the technical readiness manual. We have a technology coordinator checklist so that the technology coordinators can make sure that they are checking off and have performed the steps they need. And then contingency plan. We've talked about communication plan, making sure everyone knows who they're going to talk to if something happens. Contingency plan is here for circumstances that may occur, and we have some sample ideas for handling them. So these would be things like an unexplained fire drill, you know, weather issues, that you have some contingency plans for scenarios that may occur. And so we have some samples that are available for you. Avocet, this is our home for all of the documents and manuals and guides that are available for ACT Aspire. Make sure you are going to the Alabama Avocet site, avocet.pearson.com/Alabama ACT Aspire/home. If you do go to the general Avocet, I'm just going to show you here on training and manuals at the very bottom, we have our Avocet links. So we have state-specific links, but if you go to the general Avocet as well, right here on the home, there's a link as well. So we try very hard to make sure you're going to the right place. That way you're seeing the information specific to Alabama. So always go to the Alabama Avocet, and you'll know you're there because it's going to say ACT Aspire Alabama at the top. The general one just says ACT Aspire. So that's where you're going to go to get all of your resources. You'll see a lot of stuff under the T's. I meant to keep that up, sorry. That we have a lot of information under the T's for technical bulletins, technology coordinator. You'll see the TestNav stuff. So there's a lot of stuff under the T's that you can find regarding to our technical and technology information. The training management system, the TMS, that's also a direct link off of the landing page under our Avocet and training management system on the training and manuals page. So again, first time you come here, just going to put in, oh, I guess I've used that one. First time you come here, it is going to just ask you to confirm your email, your first name and last name, and then you'll be able to register. After you come back, then takes you straight in. So we have tabs for summative and periodic, depending on the type of testing you're doing right now. And here you see the pre-test tech readiness. So again, we have the infrastructure trial overview. We have some technology readiness, iPad. These are currently being updated right now, and we'll have new versions out very soon, but they are available. And then enhancement demo is for updates to the portal. The portal has updates every 6 weeks that happen. So these enhancement demos are short videos that walk through those enhancements, and there's always an enhancement supplement that's posted as well that walks them through in a document format. So that's the training management system. And then upcoming training. So like I said, we have 2 more versions of this infrastructure trial training next week. You're welcome to come back, or if you have others who you want to send to attend, they're October 3rd and October 6th at 9 a.m. on the 3rd and 2 p.m. on the 6th. And then coming up in late October, early November, we will have some technology readiness training opportunities. We're kind of aiming these towards our different audiences. So the first 2 will be for our new computer-based assessment, new technology coordinators, folks who need to learn about technology readiness for the first time. and then the ones in November will be aimed more towards our returning users, folks who've gone through computer-based testing already before. So some more information will probably start to come out, but you can mark your calendars, start to plan for that. Okay, so we've reached the end of our training for today. I've kind of answered some questions as we went along, but are there any other questions that folks have today? The question is, where will this recorded webinar be posted? And we can, it's usually, let me check your Avocet site. It's usually under this T for training. And then as we start to have them, then they will generally post a link here to this information. And so it may be on the Alabama site directly, but it will have a link to it here under the training as well. I see a question that says, I had a technical issue with Proctor Cash last year. What would be the best way to address that this year? Without more information, you know, I would really just refer you to contact our customer service, talk with them about the issue. If they need to, you know, escalate it to our level 2 technical support, then they will. But definitely we want to make sure that we address it sooner rather than later so that you are prepared for the assessment when it comes. And then when will the practice test be available for students? So those exemplars are available out on the landing page. So again, you're going to go to the exemplar items. They are already available, so you'll have them go through the TestNav 8 tutorial first. That's going to show them how to use TestNav, all the different functionality in the system. And then you would want to have them go through the grade and subject specific that applies for them. So we have the subject up at the top, and then you'll see that there are logins for each of the different grades. And then these booklets are intended more for the administrators so that they can help the students build on their current skills. And then another question about the best way to contact customer support. I'll have a support page up in just a moment, but on the ACT Aspire landing page, you'll see the customer contact information, 888-802-7502, and you'll see that for Alabama, you're going to press option 2. You'll hear it on the phone tree when you call in as well. Okay, are there any other questions? Feel free to send them in. I'm going to go ahead and just show that support information, and I'm still here to answer questions though, but that does go through all of our training for the infrastructure trial today. The customer service, again, 888-802-7502, and then Alabama is option 2 on the phone tree. They're available Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Central Time. You're also welcome to email us at actaspire_implementation@actaspire.org. And then we do have a survey if you'd like to take some time. It's a short survey if you want to submit feedback for this training. We're always wanting to know what we've done well or what we could have done better for next time. So the link there is www.surveymonkey.com/r/ACTAspire_fall 2016. I am your trainer, Sarah Snuggs. You'll just choose that option. And then under the select the name of the webinar you attended, at the very bottom there will be an other option, excuse me, and then just enter Alabama Infrastructure Trial. Okay, at this point, like I said, I'm still here if there are any other questions. That is the end of our training, and I want to say thank you very much for attending. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.